I think it's interesting because we talk about how you resume life and you're living, you're going from scan to scan, but outside of that, you're largely able to return to normalcy, if you will. But 3 years pass, and then you start to feel some very severe pain in the left shoulder. So again, it's the left side again for you, and you go to the ER. Can you walk us through what happened then?
Well, the pain was excruciating. I've never had pain so severe in my life, ever. I don't know what is wrong with the ER people when I showed up. They should have put me in a closet and closed the door because I was howling. I'm in a big waiting room full of people and I'm just bellowing. I can't help it. And they finally get me out into the place and I kept, oh man. So they do an x-ray. Nothing. I can't see anything unusual. And so they do a CT and they're starting to pump me full of morphine and finally get things calmed down. And the doctor comes back after a bit with the radiologist report. He said the radiologist has looked at your CT and he can't find anything in your shoulder, anything. He said, I recommend you go to an ortho guy to check it out further, but we can't find anything. However, he does notice that your spleen is twice the size it was a year ago. And he said, that is troubling. And in view of your earlier, treatment for lymphoma. So you should probably check back with your oncologist pretty quick and have him follow this up. So it's almost like the first occurrence of the cancer. I go to the ER for something else and think, oops, you see something that turns out to be lymphoma. And it happened again.
Almost seems identical. You're going in for something completely different. I don't know what you call that, right? But can you describe the impact it had on you mentally and emotionally and spiritually the second time around?
Well, the fact that it was possibly cancer again wasn't a shock. I know enough people who have been through similar situations and fighting long battles with cancer is, I know people who have fought cancer for years. And so the fact that it keeps coming back is not a surprise. And if it was coming back for me, then okay, lots of other people have been there and done that. And so it looks like it's my turn to be there and do that.
Wow. So it's almost like a measured response or something. It was like you just sort of took it in stride. There wasn't a reaction. Yeah. Right. That's incredible. So
I was frankly puzzled by this shoulder business. Much later, when I finally connected with the doctor at UT Southwestern, he said, oh, well, he said, I'll tell you what that was. He said, it was your spleen. He said, the nerve pathways from the spleen and your shoulder travel together. And he said, we call it referred pain. Your spleen is really in an uproar, but it's not going to hurt down there. It hurts up here. He says, I have other patients with the same problem. So I thought, oh, okay.
I learned something new just now as well. That's incredible, right? Because you wouldn't think about that as some natural connection. Yeah. Right. Okay, so finally, you do go back to your original hematologist oncologist, and they say, okay, let's do another PET scan, right? Tell us about what they found.
Well, he did another PET scan, and this time, sure enough, the spleen was greatly enlarged, glowed like the moon, and the sites where there were, colonies of lymphoma cells were in both sides of the neck, behind the ears, around the salivary glands, in the abdomen, in the iliac region, the inguinal nodes, and over here under my arm. And so it was, it had clearly reappeared and reappeared in a great many places all at once. So, I was definitely a candidate for something a lot more serious in therapy than was offered in the cancer center locally here.
Right.
And that's why he wanted to refer me to one of the big hospitals up in Dallas.
It was obviously, you need heavier treatment. We cannot offer it here locally. Here are two options. One was Baylor, the center in Dallas as well, and the other was UT Southwestern, also in Dallas. Correct. And again, just so people know, how did you choose between the two?
We had a friend of a friend that who had consulted a doctor at UT Southwestern and was extremely pleased with the outcome and the relationship with the physician. And because we trusted the recommendation and the people making it, we thought, providentially, here's a report that sounds credible and encouraging. Let's go for that. And that's what I did.
Okay, so wonderful. It was really a referral. It was from personal connections, and
correct.
That's how you chose UT Southwestern, and that's how you found Dr. Owan,
yes.
who's now your specialist, your doctor, and that's actually how you found us too. Was when you were looking for content, and you found his videos on YouTube with us, which is so wonderful. He's such a pleasure to talk to. So you see Dr. Owan, and he says, okay, so it's R-EPOCH, 6 cycles. Is that, and how did he describe, was that the only treatment option given at that point? And talk to us about what happened.
Well, he laid out a couple of different scenarios. The first thing was to find out what I had. And he was a little suspicious, I think, of the diagnosis. And so he actually secured the tissue from the 2018 biopsy. And he started digging around in the DNA. He had resources available to him that my original oncologist did not have. And when he deployed those resources, he said to me at one time, well, it's either mantle cell or it's CLL or it's transformation. And he didn't explain a thing about transformation. He just said it's going to be one of these three. And I could tell he was betting on it was probably going to be mantle cell. So then he goes and gets the lab work done. He calls me back and he said, Mr. Mauser, I am really sorry to tell you that what you have is a transformed CLL. He said, you actually misdiagnosed in 2018. Let me say this, because I don't want to leave the impression that my original oncologist was incompetent. He saw diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, and it was there. But what I actually had was an atypical CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. It's atypical because most of the markers for that never showed up in my blood work. And yet the genetics showed that's what I had. Then about 1 to maybe 5% of CLL patients undergo something called a Richter transformation, where the CLL begins to generate a really aggressive diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. And that's what my original oncologist saw. So he saw something. What he saw was really there, and he treated it. What he didn't see is underneath is this atypical CLL that's boiling up this aggressive lymphoma. And frankly, an oncologist in his practice might never see that. It's just not it's extremely rare to run across a case of it. So, but Dr. Owan dug and he said, no, darn, you've got that. And I thought, okay, what do we do now? And he said, okay, here's what we're going to do. And he laid out a strategy that starts with the 6 cycles of R-EPOCH. His word for it, he said, the first thing we're going to do is clear out all the junk inside you. It wasn't going to cure me. And he was quite candid. He said, R-EPOCH hasn't cured this in 20 years. It's never cured it, and it's not going to cure you now. That's not what we're doing it for. We're doing it to get rid of most of the tumor mass in you, and then we're going to hit it with something else. And that's what we proceeded to do. We went through the 6 cycles, 6 week-long cycles of R-EPOCH. He told me later that he didn't think I was going to make it through the first 3 because it's pretty stiff stuff. And I guess I'm atypical in a lot of ways because, frankly, I felt best when I was in the hospital. And part of it maybe is just I was flying high on prednisone. I don't know, but I felt good. And I went right through it without any problem. I didn't get really sick, and the hair came out. It was, but still, I tolerated it quite well. And at the end of that case, and this was October of last year in 2021. At the end of October, I had another dark PET scan. We've pushed that stuff so deep away that you couldn't see it with a PET scan. So that part was successful as far as it went.
Right. And then the discussion was, maybe you'd be a candidate for a stem cell transplant. Was supposed to be the next phase, right? It was clear the junk.
It was supposed to be a stem cell transplant. I'm not exactly sure why there was delays. Some of it is related. There's just a lot of delays in the medical profession today with the COVID stuff and the restrictions and the therapies and patients that pile up. And it was the holidays came up, and they had to do the HLA typing and a lot of tests before you do a stem cell transplant. You got to contact donors. I actually discovered I had several donors, so that wasn't going to be a problem. But then you got to contact donors and see, are you still going to be a donor? Time passes. And so November, December passed, and the 4th of January, I was scratching right there. I felt a lump. I thought, oh dear. So I went immediately. This was going to bed. I came in here, I sat at the computer and sent a note to the clinic. The next morning I got a reply and said, can you come tomorrow? And I did. And Dr. Awan examined me, and he just kind of rolled his eyes and says, it's back. And of course, by that time I had discovered the inguinals were swollen too. And he said, yeah. So stem cell transplant was off the table. And now we said, we're off the known areas of the map. And he was thinking, I could see the wheels spinning in his head. He said, I think what we're going to do is bite. We're going to get you in a clinical trial for one of the new bite drugs. And then if we can push it back again with those, we're going to hit it with CAR-T. And that's the current plan right now.
I mean, you did a great job, Bill, of summarizing years worth of what you've been through. I guess at this point, before we talk about the clinical trial and you talked about you're off the map in terms of the standard, protocol for treatment, what are the biggest sorts of lessons learned through this first couple of parts of your cancer experience? Is there anything that you were like, I think one, for instance, you pointed was, the difference between seeing a local oncologist and a specialist, and it's not a matter of who's smart and who isn't, but maybe that it's resources and stuff like that, right?
Yes, it is. In one of the videos you did with Dr. Awan that I viewed, he made a comment that I certainly endorse, which is this: if you have a really serious cancer, you should, if at all possible, use resources in a major research center. Those are the places where, if there is real therapeutic help, cutting edge therapeutic help, it will be there. It will not be in the outer rural regions. I live in a town of about 30,000. We're about 45 miles south of Dallas. And we have great medical care here for the ordinary stuff. I mean, ordinary stuff, including heart attacks. I mean, but for, kind of wild and woolly cancers, no. And that's why the oncologist that was treating me here, as soon as he saw this new resurgence, he says, no, he said, you need to go. He told me you need to go to Dallas and see one of these two centers. And so I did. And that's what I would say to anybody. Go where the researchers and clinicians are working together to fight this stuff. If there's true help that's going to help you, it's going to be there.
I so appreciate, Bill, the way that you, characterized this relationship, because again, I think it just takes, different players to be playing on the same team. And
Right.
Your local hematologist oncologist knew what he was good at and what he couldn't do for you, and
Right.
was able to refer you out when he needed to. So I think that's wonderful. And I think your point is great in terms of if it's a serious, if it's more rare, these sorts of situations, you should seek a specialist. Another question I'd love to ask you about, Bill, is my last one on this segment is, again, you went through quite a roller coaster. ER for anaphylaxis, boom, cancer. No more cancer for 3 years. ER for something else, cancer again. And then, going through different treatments.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you described a little bit of this before, but what helped you through the toughest moments? I mean, I have to imagine there were, as even keeled as you are and as, measured, that there were some pretty dark moments in there for you. What helped you the most to get through those?
Well, if I had the biggest worry, it wasn't dying. We're afraid of that. What bothers me about dying now is dying before my wife. We've been married 41 years. And you dig really, really, really deep ruts in 41 years, and you run in them, and it's comfortable and everything works. And there's this wonderful division of labor between the spouses, and you just chug, 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 chug. Take one of them out of the picture, and suddenly it's not only companionship that's gone, it's all kinds of domestic duties and processes that now devolve onto the remaining spouse. And I thought, oh, I didn't want that to happen to her. Now, what put me at ease is I am richly blessed with mature, responsible, loving children nearby. If I were to drop dead now, my wife would be well protected, cared for. I mean, she'd be very lonely and grieved, but we've got to support. The family is there to carry her on. And so I'm greatly comforted by that. And that also tends to greatly relieve my anxieties about I'm not going to make it through this one, So anyway, at her age and my age, we're short timers anyway. But I really wish that she didn't have to be a widow. I think I would do better as a widower than she is a widow, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll see.
So what I'm hearing is your thoughts were not about yourself, but really any worry was about your spouse, your wife, and thinking about her. But the fact that you have such a wonderful family and support system around you really helped get you through some of these worries. I'm so glad to hear that. So Bill, thank you for sharing that. And we will move to the second part of your story, which focuses on the clinical trial, that experience, and the lessons learned there.